The missile launched. A bright streak of fire cutting through the sky over the Red Sea, heading straight toward an American fighter jet. The Houthi rebels on the ground were celebrating. They thought they had it. A direct hit. $1 billion aircraft falling from the sky. Except, it didn't fall. The pilots saw it coming, and what happened next, it wasn't just survival. It was a response so devastating, the Houthis would remember it for years. This is the story of what happens when you fire a missile at the wrong jet, the wrong pilot, and the wrong military. The Red Sea, early 2024. For months, Houthi rebels had been making headlines, firing missiles at commercial ships, launching drones at international vessels, turning one of the world's busiest shipping lanes into a war zone. They called it solidarity with Gaza. The world called it piracy with extra steps. But the Houthis weren't just targeting cargo ships. They were getting bolder, testing limits, seeing how far they could push. And then they pushed too far. Because somewhere in those waters, an American carrier strike group was watching, waiting, and the pilots on that flight deck, they weren't the type to wait long. It was a routine patrol. At least that's what it was supposed to be. 2 FA-18 Super Hornets launched from the deck of the USS Dwight Eisenhower. Call signs Viper 1 and Viper 2. Their mission was simple: monitor the airspace, provide cover for coalition vessels, keep eyes on the Yemeni coastline. Standard stuff. They'd done it 100 times before. The sky was clear. Visibility was perfect. The kind of day where you could see trouble coming from 50 miles away. And trouble was definitely coming. At 1400 hours, Viper 1's radar lit up. A surface-to-air missile had been launched from the Yemeni coast, heading straight toward their position. The pilot's voice was calm, almost bored, like he'd done this before, because he had. Viper 1, missile inbound, bearing 270, engaging countermeasures. In the cockpit, everything happened in seconds. Chaff deployed, flares ejected. The jet banked hard right, pulling G's that would make a normal person black out. The missile screamed past, close enough to feel, not close enough to matter. Miss. Now, here's the thing about shooting at an American fighter jet. You get one shot, maybe two if you're lucky. But the moment that missile leaves the launcher, you've just announced your exact position to the most advanced military on the planet. And the Houthis, they just announced themselves to 2 very annoyed pilots with a full weapons loadout. Viper 1's pilot keyed his radio. "Command, Viper 1, we've been engaged. Request weapons free." The response came back in 3 seconds. Viper 1, weapons free. Neutralize the threat. What happened next wasn't a dogfight. It wasn't even close. This was a lesson, delivered at 500 miles per hour with precision-guided weapons, and the Houthis were about to learn it the hard way. Viper 1 banked towards the coastline. Viper 2 followed in perfect formation. The missile site was easy to find. You don't fire a surface-to-air missile without creating a massive heat signature. It's like lighting a bonfire and hoping nobody notices. The pilots noticed. From 15,000 feet, the target was locked. A mobile missile launcher, still smoking from its failed attempt. Viper 1's pilot armed his weapons. A single AGM-65 Maverick, air-to-ground, precision-guided, absolutely devastating. Viper 1, Fox 3. The missile dropped from the wing, its motor ignited, and 12 seconds later, the Houthi launcher ceased to exist. No dramatic explosion like in movies, just a flash, then smoke, then nothing. One shot, one kill, threat eliminated. You'd think that would be the end of it. One launcher destroyed, lesson taught. Go home and call it a day. But the Houthis had other ideas. See, that first launcher wasn't alone. It was part of a network. And the moment Viper 1 took out the first site, 2 more activated. 2 more missiles launched, both heading towards the American jets. This time, the pilots didn't even flinch. Viper 2, I count 2 inbound. You take left, I take right. Copy that, Viper 1, braking left. The jets split, countermeasures deployed. Both missiles lost their targets and spiraled harmlessly into the sea. And now the pilots were irritated. What followed was methodical, clinical, almost surgical. Over the next 45 minutes, Viper 1 and Viper 2 systematically dismantled every Houthi air defense position within a 20-mile radius. Missile launchers, radar installations, command vehicles, ammunition storage. One by one, they all disappeared. The Houthis kept trying. They fired 6 more missiles, 6 more misses. It was like throwing rocks at a hornet's nest, except the hornets had laser-guided weapons. By the time the jets turned back toward the carrier, the coastline was quiet, smoking but quiet. Viper 1's pilot made one final radio call. Command, Viper 1, all threats neutralized, RTB. Return to base, mission complete. Now, before we get into why this was such a catastrophic miscalculation by the Houthis, hit that subscribe button. Every week, we break down real military encounters like this one. No Hollywood drama, just facts, tactics, and the reality of modern warfare. Join the crew. Let's keep going. Back on the Eisenhower, the mood was calm. Not celebration, not high fives, just professionals doing their job. The 2 pilots debriefed with intelligence officers. Gun camera footage was reviewed. Damage assessments were compiled. The numbers were impressive. 12 Houthi positions destroyed, 0 American casualties. Both aircraft returned without a scratch. But the real story wasn't the hardware destroyed. It was the message sent. Let's be absolutely clear about something. Shooting at a U.S. fighter jet is not brave. It's not strategic. It's possibly the dumbest military decision you can make. Here's why. First, the technology gap. The F/A-18 Super Hornet is a 4th-generation multi-role fighter. It carries advanced radar systems, electronic warfare suites, and enough countermeasures to make most missiles useless. The Houthis were firing Soviet Union-era surface-to-air missiles, technology from the 1970s, trying to hit aircraft from the 2020s. It's like bringing a flip phone to a hacking competition. Second, the pilots. These aren't video game players. These are men and women who've spent years training for exactly this scenario. They've flown in simulations so realistic, the real thing feels familiar. They've practiced evasive maneuvers until muscle memory takes over. They've studied every surface-to-air system on the planet. When a missile launches, they don't panic, they don't freeze, they execute. The average reaction time? Under 2 seconds. By the time you blink, they've already deployed countermeasures and started their evasive turn. The Houthis never had a chance. Third, and this is the big one, you're not just shooting at a jet. You're shooting at a jet that belongs to a carrier strike group. Do you know what a carrier strike group contains? 1 carrier act, at least 1 cruiser, multiple destroyers, attack submarines, supply ships, and roughly 75 aircraft. That's not a target. That's a floating city with enough power to challenge most countries. When you shoot at 1 jet, you're picking a fight with all of that. The Houthis found out the hard way.
This incident wasn't isolated. Throughout 2024, the Houthis continued their campaign. Missiles at ships, drones at aircraft, even attempted attacks on the carriers themselves. And every single time, the result was the same. American ships shot down the missiles. American jets destroyed the launchers. American submarines tracked the supply lines. The Houthis kept poking. The U.S. kept responding. And the scoreboard? It wasn't even close. By some estimates, the Houthis lost over 40% of their offensive capability in just 3 months. Radar systems, missile batteries, drone facilities, command centers, all gone. And American losses? 0 aircraft, 0 ships, 0 lives. Let's talk about what the Houthis were actually facing. The Standard Missile-2, fired from Navy destroyers, can intercept targets over 100 miles away. Success rate? Classified, but very, very high. The Rolling Airframe RAM, short-range defense, specifically designed to kill incoming cruise missiles. It's the last line of defense. It almost never has to be. The Phalanx CIWS, a radar-guided Gatling gun that fires 4,500 rounds per minute. If anything gets past the missiles, this turns it into confetti. And on the jets themselves, flares that burn hotter than the jet's engines, chaff that creates false radar returns, electronic jamming systems that can confuse missile guidance. The Houthis were playing checkers. The U.S. was playing 4-dimensional chess. But here's the question nobody's asking. Why did the Houthis keep doing it? Why keep attacking when every attack failed? The answer might surprise you. See, the Houthis weren't trying to win a military victory. They couldn't. They knew that. What they were trying to do was make a statement, show the world they could stand up to America, prove they were a force to be reckoned with. Every missile launched was a propaganda video. Every drone fired was a headline. Even the failures were victories in their eyes. We shot at America, they could say. We weren't afraid. It didn't matter that every attack failed. What mattered was the attempt. And for their domestic audience, that was enough. But propaganda has a price. Every launcher destroyed was money gone. Every radar system taken out was capability lost. Every trained operator killed was experience erased. The Houthis were trading real military assets for social media clips. And the U.S., they were happy to make that trade. Because for America, this was training with live targets, experience that couldn't be bought. Every intercept, every strike, every engagement was data, lessons learned, tactics refined. The pilots who flew those missions came back better. The systems were tested in real combat. The strategies were validated. For the U.S. military, this was a classroom. For the Houthis, it was a cemetery. There's a lesson here, and it's not just for the Houthis. When you pick a fight with the American military, you're not just fighting planes and ships. You're fighting a century of technological development, trillions of dollars in research, the best training programs on the planet. You're fighting an institution that has spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. The Houthis thought they were making a statement. What they made was an example. An example of what happens when ambition exceeds capability. Let's give credit where it's due. The pilots of the USS Eisenhower performed flawlessly. Under fire, outnumbered by threats, they executed with precision. No hesitation, no errors, just professionalism. These are the men and women who spend months at sea, away from families, waiting for moments exactly like this one. And when those moments come, they deliver. Every missile evaded, every target destroyed, every safe return. That's not luck. That's thousands of hours of training paying off. So, what's the takeaway? Maybe it's about the gap between ambition and reality. The Houthis wanted to challenge America. They didn't have the tools to back it up. Maybe it's about the importance of technology. In modern warfare, the more advanced system usually wins. There's no substitute for capability. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just this. If you're going to shoot at something, make sure you can actually hit it. And if you can't, maybe don't shoot at all. The Houthis learned that lesson repeatedly, painfully, and expensively. If this story gave you a new appreciation for what our military does every day, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this one. Real events, real tactics, no fluff. And drop a comment. If you were the pilot, how would you have responded to that first missile? Aggressive retaliation or measured response? I want to hear your take. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, some jets you just don't shoot at.